Hi everyone, today we're going to be learning all about the first part of cell organelles. We'll start with the nucleus. The nucleus has 5 different parts. The nuclear membrane, the nuclear pores in the membrane, the nucleolus, the chromatin, which is the DNA tightly coiled up, and the nucleoplasm. We'll start by talking with the nucleus. The nucleus is the dark center of the cell. It stores the genetic information that you got from your mom and your dad. And it controls everything that happens in the cell. And it does this by telling the cell which proteins to make. And that process is called protein synthesis. The nucleus also controls cell division. The nucleolus, on the other hand, is sometimes confused with the nucleus. But the nucleolus is the dark center inside of the nucleus. It doesn't have a membrane, and it's basically made up of RNA. And the RNA, ribosomal RNA, makes ribosomes. So the nucleolus makes ribosomes. The nuclear membrane, or nuclear envelope, has very specialized pores. These pores are quite large for the nucleus, but they only allow in proteins and RNA. And the same for leaving the nucleus, proteins and RNA only. And that helps just to protect the nucleus. Chromatin is densely coiled DNA, and because there is such a massive amount of DNA inside every cell in your bodies, it has to be coiled and wrapped up. And the cell does this by wrapping the DNA up around histone proteins, which is what these gray balls are representing here. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see if this is one DNA, it gets spun up and wrapped around these blue histone proteins. All of those wrapped up pieces get coiled together and then twisted up and even further wrapped and coiled until ultimately you end up with this X-shaped chromosome during mitosis. And I'm sure you'll recognize that version of DNA. DNA's job is it contains the blueprint for all of the proteins in the body. So the DNA has the blueprint for what color your eyes are going to be. And the DNA has the blueprint for whether or not your body is able to make insulin. And your DNA has the blueprint for all of the enzymes in your body that are required to digest your food. Next, we'll talk about the nucleoplasm. The nucleoplasm is basically just the jelly-like cytoplasm that's inside the nucleus. It's very watery, and what it does is it supports all of the chromatin and the nucleolus and all of the proteins and enzymes that are sitting inside the nucleus. If you look at this picture, you'll see that this is the nucleus, and this is the nucleolus of an animal cell. Next, we'll talk about the mitochondria here in this picture. The mitochondria is quite easy to recognize. It almost looks like a swimming pool. The mitochondria is the furnace of the cell. It makes all the energy that your body needs to do the things that you do daily. It has 2 membranes. The inner membrane is called the cristae, and it's quite folded up and wrapped up. You'll see it's quite twisty. And that just provides a lot of surface area for all the reactions that occur across the cristae. Now, what is the reaction that happens at the mitochondria? That reaction is cellular respiration. And what the mitochondria does is it converts the chemical energy that we eat, which is sugar, and it turns it into ATP. This is an electron micrograph picture of a mitochondria. You can see the cristae, and that's what makes it quite easy to recognize. So mitochondria performs cellular respiration, and how it does that is it takes sugar. This C6H12O6 is glucose. And the mitochondria takes the glucose that we eat in our food, and it joins it with the oxygen that we breathe in with our lungs. It turns those two compounds into two waste products, CO2, water. But the whole point, and the main thing that we're trying to do is make ATP energy. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, and it's a molecule with 3 phosphates. And that is the energy that our body uses to do all of the jobs that we have to do. Next, we'll talk about ribosomes. A ribosome is a very small organelle. It doesn't have a double membrane. It's made by the nucleolus, and it's composed of rRNA. Ribosomes make proteins. So the nucleolus makes the ribosome, and the ribosome makes the proteins. And as they're making the proteins, they make sure that all of the amino acids are in the correct order. And that just makes sure that the protein is going to be the correct shape to do its job. Here's a picture, a really great picture of a ribosome, and you can see the green logs. There's 2 parts to every ribosome, a big part and a small part. So that green is representing the ribosome. This long strand here represents the mRNA. That's the messenger RNA. We'll learn more about that. And this here is what the ribosome is joining together. So these are the amino acids. And the ribosome uses the code from the mRNA to make sure that the amino acids that are coming to the ribosome are joined up in the right order. And this chain of amino acids is protein. Now, ribosomes are usually attached to the REF-ER. And when they are attached to the REF-ER, what they're doing is they're making proteins that they can put into the REF-ER, which is a transport system, and the REF-ER will send those proteins out of the cell. When the cell is making proteins that need to be sent, say, into the digestive system, or into the immune system, or into the blood, then the cell will make those proteins with the ribosomes that are sitting on the REF-ER. Some ribosomes are sitting just loosely in the cytoplasm, and many times they join together in a chain. So you see all these ribosomes here, they're joined up in a long chain. This is called a polysome. And a polysome will take the same mRNA, all the ribosomes along that chain of ribosomes, that polysome, will be making a copy of the exact same protein. This is how the cell makes proteins to be used inside the cell. So if the cell needs an enzyme to do some chopping up of molecules inside the cell, it will use the ribosomes along the polysome to do that. Here's a picture of some polysomes, and you can see many of them are in these chains, just free floating in the cytoplasm.
So make sure you think about your hot questions, and we'll see you in class.